Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Business. Appreciate you coming back with us. I am here with our second guest, and that is Megan Graham. Megan is the Vice President of Business Development for FGP, or Find Great People. And as I said at the top of the show, you know who FGP is. They are a staffing, a search, and a consulting firm headquartered in Greenville. They also have offices in Columbia and Charleston, and even over in Nashville, Tennessee. And Megan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, I'm glad you are here. A couple episodes ago, we had your colleague, Steve Hall, in joining us.
Yes.
And so I've known Steve for quite some time, and so I always enjoy talking to him. So it's always good to have FGP in the house.
Glad to be here.
So before we get started, just tell me quickly about what you do. As the business development person for FGP, what is that? What do you do?
So I have responsibility for our integrated staffing division. So to explain that quickly, that would be any technical or mid-level leadership role down to what you would consider an entry-level opportunity in our business. That team is roughly made up of 15 to 16 business development folks and then 20 to 25 recruiters, depending on the time of year.
Right. So you got a pretty big staff.
I do, yeah. Awesome team.
And do you get to travel?
I
Going
do.
to the different offices?
Yeah, so I'm actually based in Chapin, South Carolina.
Okay.
So I sit really conveniently equal from our Charleston, Columbia, and Greenville offices.
Well, how about that?
I do my best to be in those offices weekly.
Yeah.
Charleston sometimes can be biweekly, but a great snapshot of the state.
All right, the hiring market. My goodness, has your industry had some roller coaster to it over the course of the last 4 years, right?
Yes.
COVID, we're 4 years removed from COVID. That's hard to believe. But right before COVID hit, we were, from an unemployment rate perspective, we're talking minuscule numbers in South Carolina, record-breaking numbers. Everybody had a job for the most part. Then COVID hits, and my gosh, does it go the other way? But then it starts going up and down and up and down. All kinds of stuff. Tough job for you guys, I would assume, over the last few years, keeping up with which direction we're going.
Yes. Yeah, very tough, but we're lucky to have very agile teams. So we have seen demand shift pretty generously this year towards more of a staffing augment model with most of our clients. So we see our clients utilizing temporary staffing in a way that they didn't in 23 and really in 22 either, in early 23, 22. I think the back half of this year, we will see clients just being very intentional with how they bring on talent, mitigating any risk to overhiring in their direct hire or long-term group, and using temporary folks in just a more intentional way to meet business needs so they can slowly assess what the market is doing and who they may need without committing to a permanent, though there's no such thing as a permanent hire, but direct hire, if you will.
So remote and hybrid schedules became all the talk a couple years ago. At one point, you know, I think employees began to have all the leverage in that relationship for a period of time.
Yeah.
At least that's the way it appeared for me, you know, an outside looking in. But it seems to me that is switching back now, even though we are continuing, of course, companies continue to have a lot of remote opportunities and hybrid opportunities. But what have you seen?
We're seeing a normalization of that trend as well. Flexibility is still extremely important, as is your candidate and internal employee experience. But by and large, South Carolina specifically is a state where you are in the office 5 days a week, or typically you're working a hybrid schedule. When we have folks in our state that are 100% remote, they're concentrated primarily in two areas, one of which is technology talent. Simply because you have to access that talent and they aren't always in the state. And so that's just been by nature of business need rather than the preference of the business that has to be 100% remote. The other piece that I would say is we have a lot of folks that have relocated into South Carolina that work for organizations outside of the area that are 100% remote. So our remote population in the state is growing. I'm just not necessarily convinced they're in employers within our state, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And a couple years ago, as I said, it seemed that employees had plenty of leverage, hence the great resignation, as we called it, right? Folks were quitting right and left because all of a sudden they found they had the leverage. They found that this is how I want my job to look, and if you can't give it to me, then someone else will. You said that trend is now normalizing. Or do you think it's going to get back to where it was before?
I'm not sure that we'll ever recover from a candidate-driven market, which is how we describe this internally at Find Great People. The reason that I'm not sure we will recover fully is because our population overall is shrinking. And so high-skilled roles are always going to be difficult to find, particularly accounting and finance, CPA track, engineering, health sciences with additional accreditations. I think in the very near and long-term future, those folks may be able to be a bit more discerning in their search process. But by and large, we are seeing a normalization of the candidate-driven market. We're actually also seeing candidates pause. So even if a new opportunity comes in that might be better than the seat that they're in or with the organization, they're pausing because they've just recently made a change and they don't want to show that lack of tenure. So we're feeling a pause on the company side so that they're being intentional about who they're bringing in and not overhiring. We did not feel that last year. Companies were happy to overhire when they found the talent. But then that pause on the company side duplicates on the candidate side, because a lot of candidates have just made a change in the last 3 years. And so they want to show tenure in their current seat. So it's an interesting time in the market.
Let's go back to what you said a minute ago. You talked about that contract and temporos have become a little more popular these days. Let's go back to that a second. Why is contract work becoming so much more prevalent?
That's a great question. And we see this often in times of economic uncertainty or market noise. And the reason that we see that demand rise during those times is because business owners at the end of the day are humans, right? And there's uncertainty around their business. And we are all susceptible to market noise. So when they hear, gosh, we may be in a recession, we may not be in a recession, what they do is they say, okay, I know we need 2 people in this department. Could we make that into 1 full-time position? And then could we hire augmented temporary staff to help us sprint towards this business goal, but not take on the permanent salary long-term?
I suppose in those situations, not only are you not taking on a permanent salary, but the benefits as well. So you have savings there. A
lot of embedded costs.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
The other piece that I would say that we've seen by way of temporary demand is that particularly around technology, when you're sprinting towards a product or a go live date, at the end of that, you need far less people to keep that product or go live date serviceable. And so we'll see a spike in, say, 4 or 5 developers that are needed on a project for 6 months, and then the project is just truly over. So it vacillates between those 2 reasons.
All right, Megan, I'm going to get you out of here on this. I want to talk about soft skills for a second. Is it my imagination, or does it seem like soft skills are becoming harder and harder to find?
It is not your imagination. I think what we have to remember as leaders or professionals with more business tenure is that is probably our responsibility in our newer folks to create awareness. We have a lot of recent graduates that are fantastic and highly educated. The reality is their communication most of the time is done through written, whether that is text or a chat channel for their university. So the reality is, unless they have very strong mentors or a mom, dad, or one or the other that works in business and requires them to exercise those muscles, they may not have that skill set when they enter the workforce. I have the luxury of leading a lot of recent graduates in my seat, and it's actually one of my favorite things to do. Those that are coming out of college are highly capable, And so in those situations, I would really encourage leadership to just go straight to it. Have the conversations to say, listen, you've got the skill set all day long. Let me talk you through how we polish up communication, how we show up dressed for the job we want, not the one we have, right? But absolutely, those are coaching points. And gosh, I remember the first interview I ever had in my life was at a McDonald's, and my mom purchased me a business suit.
To go to McDonald's.
Correct.
It wouldn't happen today.
Correct. And so we've all gotten away from the formality of soft skills and how much they matter. And so I think the best thing you can do for your earlier career teammates is create awareness and make sure that you tie it to their personal growth and how important that is.
Megan, good stuff.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, Joel.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Folks, that is Megan Graham. She is the Vice President of Business Development for FGP, or Find Great People. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back in about a minute and a half, and we're going to be talking to Secretary of Commerce Harry Lightsey, and we'll see you in a second.